Summer is time to go grocery shopping in the garden. A time for barbecuing and gathering with friends and family outside, and cooking up some of our favorite traditional family recipes that, well, we really only eat during this special sunny time. Here are some of my farmhouse favorite recipes that you can take to your summer gatherings this year. And some of these recipes have been in the family for a long time. When the garden starts producing, grocery shopping looks like this. We eat whatever is coming fresh out of the garden, and lucky for us, we have some red potatoes coming out of the garden, which means potato salad. I didn't grow up ever eating a store-bought deli potato salad. We grew up on Mama's homemade potato salad made with homemade dill pickles and eggs. So one of the first things I learned to make when I grew up, got married, went out on my own was how to make and recreate Mama's potato salad. And what makes that even better yet is making it with your own homegrown potatoes. But the first recipe that we're actually going to get started today is a root beer baked beans, which is going to be the only new recipe that I share with you today. I was so curious when I came across this recipe for root beer baked beans. Baked beans is definitely a summer classic, something that we usually have at barbecues. But I wanted to experiment with this new recipe, so I started soaking a pound of navy beans overnight. I'm going to be baking them off in the oven. I was so tempted to cook this recipe in the Instapot, but I knew it just wouldn't be the same as the slow-cooked baked beans. These dishes are going to be perfect for this Sunday, which is Father's Day. I'm going to be baking up a rack of ribs for Jared, and I'm excited to show you guys what the kids and I got him for Father's Day. We got Jared a massage gun, something that he's been wanting for a while. I personally was skeptical of these little massage guns and whether or not you could really get a good massage from these, but we did try a family member's massage gun when we went to go visit, and we were shocked at what a difference it made, especially with Jared's back injury. This is a Bob & Brad mini Q2 massage gun. What I like about this mini massage gun is that it fits nicely in the palm of my hand. I don't even have to push hard. It packs a punch. It's a very powerful massage gun. It comes with 5 different attachments. This springing rubber one is probably my favorite, although the other attachments have their very own purposes and uses as well. Another favorite of mine is kind of this foam ball. It feels really great on the feet. It conveniently charges up with our compatible phone chargers. I love that it's light and small and can fit into my bag, and we can take it on all of our trips and wherever we go. What's better yet is that this massage gun is affordable. Jared hates it when I spend a lot of money on his gifts. He's just a frugal guy. You can get this gun for under $100. It is priced at $69.99, but with my 10% off code, you can get it for $59.99. Thanks for sponsoring this video, Bob and Brad, and happy Father's Day to all of our wonderful fathers in our lives. So for the root beer baked beans, I started out by chopping up 4 thick slices of bacon, and I'm sauteing that in my Dutch oven. I also chopped up 1 large onion, and once this bacon gets nice and crispy, I'm adding this onion, and I'm going to let this saute with the bacon for about 4 to 5 minutes, and until that onion is nice and browned. Now I'm adding a half a cup of dark molasses and 2 heaping tablespoons of whole grain mustard. This recipe technically didn't have the amount of salt that you needed to add. I added about a teaspoon of salt, but it could have used a whole lot more. So definitely go closer to 2 teaspoons of salt. I think when you are cooking your beans from scratch, they just need a lot more salt than what you find in a can. And now I'm adding 12 ounces of root beer. Go with the full sugar, sweet stuff. That's going to make these beans so much more caramelized and rich as they slow cook in your oven. These beans have been soaking for probably closer to 12 hours than 8 hours. So we'll see how fast these beans really take when cooking. And then we're going to add 4 cups of water and put the lid on this pot and put it right into the oven at 300 degrees and let that cook with the lid on for about 2 to 2.5 hours. And when we were picking up root beer from the grocery store, which is pretty much a treat, I don't buy a lot of soda. Of course, we had to pick up some vanilla ice cream so we could conveniently have root beer floats this weekend. So for our potato salad, I picked out all of the potatoes that had been pretty much cut into or damaged when we were harvesting with the shovel. And I'm going to put those straight into our potato salad. So I'm just cleaning those up right now, scrubbing off all of the dirt. When I usually make my typical potato salad, I usually use russet potatoes. And I didn't realize that I think we planted all red potatoes. It must have just been the seed potatoes that were available to us at the time. But no matter, red potatoes make a delicious potato salad as well. And what's nice about the red skin potatoes is I don't worry as much about the skin. These potatoes cooked a whole lot faster because they just weren't as big as a giant russet. So usually I add the eggs to the pot of boiling water. These potatoes were done before then. I usually just poke them with a fork. If they are the least bit tender is when I like to pull them out. If you found that you have let your potatoes cook a little too long, you can put them in the fridge for a little while and let them cool before cutting them. And now I'm putting 3 eggs in the pot of boiling water to boil for about 14-15 minutes. I went out to gather some fresh onions from the garden because I like to use the green tops for green onions in my potato salad, as well as the little white bulb of onions. I think these onions have a little bit more time in the garden before they're all ready to be harvested. As you can tell, this recipe doesn't have exact amounts of everything. I'm sorry for that. I usually just make it exactly like this. I eyeball everything. So I'm taking a few stalks of celery. I like to use the leafy parts of the celery. They're so full of flavor. And as far as the amount of potatoes go, I shoot for a big bowl of boiled potatoes. I know that's not very precise. And I'm just using one of these medium-sized onions. If you just have green onions, you can just use green onions. Sometimes if I don't have green onions, I just use a medium-sized white onion. But since I have both today, we're using both. I think what really makes this potato salad stand out is the homemade dill pickles. But of course you can use store-bought dill pickles, and that's just fine. But I'm using about 4 of these pickles, chopping them up. I'm going to put these in here. And I'm also going to reserve the juice to go into the creamy mayo sauce. These cucumbers were harvested from our garden last year and made into pickles. And I hope our cucumbers do as well this year. This is a trick I like to do for my boiled eggs to get them to cool faster and also peel easier. I always put my freshly boiled eggs into some ice cold water or just really cold water. I'm pulling my potatoes out of the fridge. That just helps them cut even better when they're a little bit colder. And I'm not really being too picky about the red skins since they're nice and soft. If some of the skins were kind of coming off of the potatoes, I peeled those off. If I'm using russet potatoes, this is when I peel the brown skins off the russets. I remember one time my grandma couldn't remember whether she was supposed to peel the potatoes or boil them with the skins on. And I was just a little girl. And I said, I don't know, Grandma. And she peeled the potatoes and then boiled them. And I remember that year's potato salad was more of like mashed potato salad. And so I always remember to make sure to boil my potatoes with the skins on. But having these eggs soaked in cold water, they peeled nice and easy. I also picked up this trick from a different family member. This is not something my mom normally does, but she grates her eggs, her boiled eggs, into the salad, and it makes for a creamier potato salad. When you put the sauce in, it kind of mixes with the tender egg yolks and really does make for a kind of thicker, creamier salad. Plus, if you have people who are not crazy about boiled eggs, that kind of helps them disappear into the salad. So now that our salad has all of the things it needs, we're going to put together the sauce. I'm just pulling out my dill weed and my celery seed. This sauce calls for about 2 heaping cups of mayo. I like my potato salad nice and creamy. And then I'm going to pour in about 2 tablespoons of the dill pickle juice and a nice heaping teaspoon of dill weed. I don't think you can really go too wrong. If you have fresh dill, that's even better. And then about a half a teaspoon of celery seed. And then make sure to add some salt and pepper to taste. About 2 tablespoons of yellow mustard. Sometimes I use Dijon mustard, and that's really good too. And about 1/4 a cup to a half a cup of my homemade sweet relish. I just recently started adding sweet relish to my potato salad in addition to the dill pickles. I just like the balance of sweetness and salty. And then we're going to mix it all in. And it is an absolutely delicious, creamy dill pickle classic potato salad. The potato salad that my boys beg for and ask me for, and they just go and get a plate full of this for snack in between meals and when there's leftovers in the fridge. They just love it. The nice thing about all of these recipes today is that you can put some saran wrap over the top of them, put them in the fridge, and make them a day ahead or 2 days ahead. They do great in the fridge. This particular recipe is actually a bean salad recipe that my grandma used to make, and my mom has made it, and now I like to make it, and it's definitely better made the day before. It needs time to marinate. If you think you don't like bean salad because you have tried it from the grocery store deli, I totally understand. But that's only because you haven't tried this bean salad. This marinade is what makes this bean salad. And this bean salad has 2 cans of green beans, 1 can of wax beans. It calls for a can of garbanzo beans or chickpeas, 1 can of red kidney beans. Although I did add an extra can of garbanzo beans, I just think there's so much marinade, you could definitely add an extra can of one of these beans. And then also a can of diced olives. This recipe also calls for a half a cup of diced white onion and 1 green bell pepper. This is definitely one of the very few recipes that I used all canned things in. I usually like to use mostly fresh produce, especially with my summer recipes, but When it comes to nostalgic recipes that my grandma used to use or things that I grew up on, there's just sometimes no need to change that. It's good just the way it is. And I love to think of my grandmas when I'm cooking. I love to think of that legacy. Holy smokes, this is a huge salad. Make sure to bring this to a big barbecue or a family reunion or something. Now, for the marinade, it calls for 1 cup of vinegar. I'm just using white distilled vinegar, and 1 cup of oil. I'm also using olive oil. It calls for 1/4 a cup of concentrated orange juice, a half a cup of sugar, 4.5 teaspoons of onion salt, and 1 tablespoon of garlic salt, 1.5 teaspoons of thyme. I usually actually only use 1 teaspoon of thyme because I'm not crazy about thyme. 1 teaspoon of basil and 1 teaspoon of capers with the liquid, and 1 teaspoon of dill seed. Lastly, this recipe calls for 4 tablespoons of lemon juice, and I'm using my food processor, but you can just throw it all into your blender as well. Blend that all up, pour it over the salad, put a lid on the bowl or some saran wrap, and let the salad marinate for at least 3 hours. I like to make mine the day before. The salad is best when it is chilled and marinated. Recently, we just went to a family reunion, and it was so fun to get in the kitchen and be cooking with my sister-in-law and preparing salads the day before. She made a recipe that her mom used to always make. I made this recipe that my mom used to always make, and we put them in the coolers and brought them to our family reunions, and it was a big hit at the family barbecue. So, what are some meaningful recipes that you love to bring to the family barbecue? Go ahead and put them down in the description box below. Even better yet, leave a recipe for us all to share. So I'm just checking on these baked beans. It's been 2.5 hours. I'm taking the lid off. The recipe called to let them bake for another 2 hours in the oven. So I'm just going to watch that. The liquid has reduced by 1/2. I don't usually make all of these recipes in one sitting and in one day, but I made an exception to share them with all of you. I should have chopped up 4 large onions and diced them up for all of these recipes, but that's okay. For this next recipe, we are making a corn fritter casserole. This is delicious. This is not really a typical corn bread. It's definitely a corn casserole. It's a little bit softer, but it goes great at the family barbecue, or even served warm next to a nice hot piping chili. And it calls for 3 tablespoons of softened butter, 3 large egg whites. I'm actually using just 2 eggs. That's the way my mom does it. 1 8-ounce block of cream cheese, a half a cup of finely chopped onion, 1/2 cup finely chopped red pepper, and I'm blending that all together until it's nice and creamy and fluffy. If you have pulled out your cold cream cheese and it's a little bit chunky here, I've done that a million times, and that's totally fine. It's delicious with chunks of cream cheese in it. And then I'm adding 1 can of whole kernel corn and 1 can of cream style corn. Now, this original recipe calls for a box of Jiffy corn mix, and I debated on sharing that with you guys because I normally make everything from scratch. But this is just the way that I've always made it, and so I went ahead and added the Jiffy corn mix. But if you wanted to make it all from scratch, I think you could definitely get away with adding a half a cup of cornmeal, a half a cup of flour, a teaspoon of baking powder or baking soda, and probably a teaspoon of sugar. But you can experiment with that from scratch. It really is nice and easy to just go with the Jiffy box. That is one of the seldom box goods that I do like to buy. So once that's all mixed in and put in the casserole dish, you can bake it at 375 degrees for at least 50 minutes. You'll know when that toothpick comes out nice and clean from the center. So our baked beans definitely take much longer when they're cooked in the oven, but I think the flavor is so much richer. The key to these baked beans was cooking the liquid down, letting all of the sugars and flavors be caramelized and kind of create a crust on top of those beans. And they got done quicker than the recipe called, I think because I let them soak for 12 hours instead of 8, but they were soft and tender and delicious. And no recipe is really needed for a juicy, sweet, fresh melon served with any meal. This is the joy of summer eating, is eating what is fresh right out of the garden. I love all of the fruits that we get to enjoy during the summertime. It's such a sweet treat. Our corn fritter casserole took about 55 minutes to bake all the way through. It's fluffy, it's creamy, slightly sweet. I think this recipe would be fantastic if you wanted to add a can of jalapenos as well. I want to thank you all for being here with me today. I get a little nostalgic when I'm in the kitchen. You'll have to forgive me for that, but I hope that you have left some of your favorite recipes down in the comments below, and make sure to check out the Bob and Brad massage gun in the description box as well. And I'll catch you next week for another video on restoring home, family, and spirit. Thanks for joining me here today. Love you lots.